Audrey Sinclair was standing in my bathroom doorway in a burgundy-wrapped dress, holding a hair clip between her teeth and asking me, through that clip, whether I thought her earrings were too much for a hospital fundraiser or just enough to be interesting. I told her they were fine. She took the clip out of her mouth. Fine is what you say when you haven't looked. I looked. Gold hoops, small enough to be tasteful, large enough that she'd clearly thought about it. They're perfect, I said. That's better. She turned back to the mirror. Now zip me up. The dress had a zipper at the side, the kind that required 2 hands and more coordination than I usually had at 6:30 on a Friday evening. I set down my coffee and crossed the bathroom, and she went still the way she always did when she was trying not to make something into something. I got the zipper on the first try. She exhaled. There, I said, but I didn't step back right away. Audrey was looking at herself in the mirror, turning slightly, and I was standing just behind her left shoulder, close enough that my reflection was in the frame too, neither of us moving. She had this way of going quiet right before a big night, not nervous exactly, more like she was choosing which version of herself to carry into the room. You look beautiful, I said. I meant it the way I always meant things I rarely said out loud. She went still, not a big dramatic pause, just a small one, the kind that lasted 2 seconds but felt longer. Then she met my eyes in the mirror. That, she said quietly, did not sound like something you say to a friend. I could have laughed it off. I had a list of jokes I kept ready for exactly these moments, but I didn't reach for any of them. No, I said, I don't think it did. The bathroom suddenly felt like a different room. Same light, same cluttered counter, same towel she always folded wrong, but there was no easy way to arrange ourselves back into the shape we'd been 30 seconds ago. Her phone lit up on the counter. She looked at it, and I watched her face shift from something unguarded into something organized. She picked it up, listened. Then, what do you mean the tables are numbered wrong? A pause. Priya, don't tell me probably. Is the head table in the center of the room or not? Another pause, shorter. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't let anyone sit down yet. She hung up and looked at me with the focused calm of someone who had learned to save panic for after the problem was solved. I was already picking up my jacket. Seating crisis, I said. Seating disaster, she corrected. There's a difference. Grab my clutch from the chair. I grabbed her clutch. She grabbed her coat. We were out the door in 4 minutes, and neither of us said anything about what had happened in the bathroom. But it was there in the car with us, sitting quietly in the back seat like a passenger who'd paid for the ride and wasn't getting out early. Audrey worked in fundraising and donor relations for Sick Kids Foundation in Toronto. She had been there for 6 years, which meant she had spent 6 years being the person who made wealthy Canadians feel good about writing large checks in rooms designed to look warm and intimate for 300 people. She was good at it in a way that went past competence into something closer to a calling. She understood what people needed to feel before they were willing to give, and she could provide that feeling while simultaneously handling a florist emergency and a board member's ego without losing her smile once. Tonight was the annual Winter Gala. Black tie, live auction, dinner for $350, and roughly $2 million in fundraising targets. She'd been building this event for 4 months. The venue was the Fairmont Royal York, Ballroom C, and based on the look she was wearing in the cab, I knew at least one thing had already gone sideways before we arrived. I met Audrey 4 years ago at a trivia night at a bar on Queen West. I was on a team with my coworker. She was on a team with 2 friends and a stranger who turned out to be genuinely terrible at Canadian geography. Her team lost by 4 points because that stranger thought Nunavut was a province. She was at the bar afterward explaining with patient fury why this mattered, and I said, from 2 stools away, that I'd made the same mistake in grade 9. She turned around and said, "Were you also 32? I said no. She said, "Then you're forgiven." After that, we were just in each other's lives. The way it happens sometimes, gradually, then completely. Coffee runs, walks along the waterfront. Her showing up at my place during a Leafs game with takeout from the Thai place on College Street because she'd had a bad week and didn't want to explain it. Just wanted to sit somewhere quiet. Me texting her at 11 p.m. asking if she'd already seen the documentary that was on, and her calling back instead of texting because she found voice memos pretentious and texting in full sentences after 10 p.m. inefficient. We called each other friends. It was the word that fit without requiring anything. Until tonight, when I stood behind her in my bathroom mirror and said something in a voice that didn't fit the word anymore, By the time the cab pulled up to the hotel, Audrey had already switched into event mode, which looked from the outside like total composure, and from the inside, I knew, like a very controlled kind of controlled chaos. She thanked the driver, checked her earrings one more time in the dark window of the cab, and walked through the lobby like she had personally designed the carpets. The Fairmont was doing what it did best, looking expensive and inevitable, the kind of place that made you feel like you'd arrived somewhere. The ballroom was already lit with warm amber light, candles down the center tables, floral arrangements that probably cost more per stem than my dinner. A jazz quartet was set up near the far wall. The auction items were displayed on tall pedestals near the entrance. A hockey package, a Muskoka cottage weekend, a private dinner for 12. Priya met us at the door with a tablet, a small headset, and the face of someone who had been holding a problem together with their hands for 40 minutes. "Okay," she said. "Worst one first." Audrey didn't stop walking. "Go." Table assignments for the corporate tables got switched in the system. RBC and TD are reversed. They're at adjacent tables. Audrey closed her eyes for exactly 1 second. Fixable. Who else knows? Me, catering captain, and the table attendant. Nobody's seated yet. Fix it before the first wave comes in. Swap the cards. What else? The live auction MC had a flight delay from Vancouver. He's landing at Pearson in 40 minutes. Do we have his notes? Email to me this morning. I'll run it myself until he gets here if I have to. Next. Priya winced. The Muskoka package. One of the donors who gave it. They reached out this afternoon to say they'd like to be acknowledged before the auction starts. Which would be fine, except he's table 6, and table 6 is also where Marcus Webb is sitting. Audrey stopped walking. I looked between them. I'm guessing that name means something. Priya gave me a tight smile. Hi Garrett, you look nice. Marcus Webb donated generously last year and then had a very public disagreement with the Foundation's communications team, Audrey said, voice flat, in a Globe and Mail comments section. He also technically started it, Priya added. He also technically started it, Audrey confirmed. Move him to table 9, seat him next to the couple from the Schulich network. They'll talk about endowments all night. He'll feel important. No one will fight. Priya was already moving. Audrey pressed her fingers briefly to her ribs, the way she did when she was recalibrating, and then she looked at me with something in her eyes that wasn't quite the event planner. You don't have to stay at my side all night, she said. I know this isn't exactly. I'm here, I said. Tell me what you need. She looked at me for 1 extra second. Don't let anyone corner me for longer than 5 minutes. I lose track of time when I'm being polite. I know, I said. I've been watching you do it for 4 years. She almost said something. Then a board member came toward her with outstretched arms, and she was gone. For the next hour, I made myself useful in the way that didn't require a title or a headset. I helped a server restack programs that had tipped off a table. I intercepted a volunteer who was about to put a reserved sign on the wrong chair. When the jazz quartet took a break and the audio tech looked panicked about the transition music, I found the laptop, found the playlist Audrey had labeled Walk and Do Not Talk, and pressed play. The room kept moving without noticing the seam. Audrey moved through it all like the room was an instrument she knew how to play. She introduced donors to board members, redirected a conversation that was becoming heated about provincial healthcare funding, walked a first-time table captain through the paddle raise protocol with enough calm that the woman looked relieved rather than overwhelmed. Every few minutes I caught her eyes across the room and she gave me a small look that translated, roughly, to still holding it together. But I'd known her long enough to read the other signals too. The way her champagne glass stayed at the same level all night, she'd take a sip, then set it down and forget it. The way her posture was just slightly too straight, the kind of straight that came from effort rather than comfort. She was managing the way she always managed, with a precision that other people read as ease. I found her near the auction display during the cocktail hour, standing with a printed order of events and a pen, making small check marks. You're standing like you're about to defend something, I said quietly. She didn't look up. I stand like this normally. You stand like this when you're about to have a very productive breakdown and would like to do so in private. She glanced up at me, and for half a second the composure softened. That is an extremely specific reading. 4 years. She made one more check mark. The MC is stuck in customs. I'm going to have to open the live auction myself. You know the items backwards. I know the items. I don't love being the face. I'm better as the structure. You'll be fine. You don't know that. I do, actually. I took the pen gently from her hand. I've watched you handle a florist breakdown, a blocked caterer entrance, and a table seating crisis in the last 90 minutes, and the room has no idea anything went wrong. You'll be fine. She looked at me in the way she sometimes did when something landed in an unexpected place, like she wasn't sure how to account for it. Before she could answer, someone to my left said, "Audrey." The voice had a specific kind of ease to it, the ease of someone who expected rooms to reorganize around him. I turned before she did. He was tall, well-dressed, the kind of careful grooming that looked effortless because it cost money. He was smiling at Audrey in a way that I could tell was specifically designed to look like nostalgia. His name was Tyler. I knew who he was, the same way you know a draft that comes under a door, not from seeing the source, just from what it does to the air. He had been with Audrey for 2 years. He had ended things the way some people ended things. Gradually, by making her feel like she was asking for too much by wanting to be known. She had not talked about it dramatically. She'd shown up at my place on a Wednesday evening with a reusable grocery bag full of snacks and said, "We're watching something long and I don't want to talk." And I had put on a 6-episode documentary about national parks without asking a single question. "Tyler," she said. Her voice was even, not cold, not warm, controlled. His eyes moved to me with the calculated patience of someone doing math. "I didn't know you were bringing someone." "Garrett," I said, and offered my hand. He shook it in the way men sometimes do when the handshake is also a measurement. "Right. I think Audrey's mentioned you." "Good things, I hope." "Mostly that you're reliable." He said it pleasantly enough, but the words sat in the ear wrong. "That's a good quality." He looked back at Audrey. "You look well? This is your event?" "It is," she said. "Big year," he said. "I saw the goal in the program. 2 million is ambitious." "We'll exceed it," she said simply. He smiled like that was charming. "Still the same," he said. "Always certain." "I prefer prepared," she said. He turned to me. She always had the hardest time letting people see when things were difficult. His voice was warm, explanatory, like he was sharing something helpful. I think she worried it made her look uncertain. I looked at him. "That's an interesting way to talk about someone standing right next to you." His smile didn't change. "I'm just saying she's always been driven. I always admired that." "She's also incredibly good at what she does," I said, "which is why this room looks like this, and the gala is going to exceed target. If you admired the driven part, I'm not sure why you'd undercut it in the same sentence, but that might just be me." There was a pause. Tyler looked at me with the slightly recalibrated expression of someone who hadn't expected friction. He excused himself after another 30 seconds with the smoothness of a man who had lots of practice leaving rooms gracefully. Audrey turned slightly away from where he'd been standing. I followed her toward the far side of the room near the windows where it was quieter. She stopped when there was enough space between us and the nearest cluster of donors. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I know." He wasn't wrong about everything. She said it carefully. "I do have trouble letting people see when things are difficult. You also happen to handle difficult things with more grace than most people handle easy ones. Those aren't contradictions." He just used the first part to make you feel like the second part didn't count. I looked at her. "He doesn't get to be the expert on you." She looked out toward the room. The tables were filling up now. The amber light caught her earrings, the gold hoops she'd almost second-guessed. "I hate," she said quietly, "that he still knows how to find the exact right nerve." "That's not a flaw in you. That's just what happens when someone's had access." She looked at me then, in a way that was different from how she'd looked at me all evening. Not the event planner, not the person managing the room, just Audrey, in the way she only was when she'd stopped holding everything at arm's length. "You're very good," she said, "at knowing what to say. Mostly I just tell the truth. That's the part that's dangerous." Before either of us could figure out what to do with that, Priya materialized at Audrey's shoulder. "MC just texted. He's at the hotel 20 minutes out. Board chair wants to do a quick pre-dinner photo with the key organizers." She looked between us with the expression of someone who had noted something and decided this was not the moment. "Audrey, do you want Garrett in the photo?" Audrey didn't hesitate. "Yes." Priya's eyebrows went up a millimeter. I'll tell the photographer. 2 minutes, near the auction display. She left. Audrey turned to me. If you'd rather not. I don't mind, I said. She reached over and straightened my collar, which didn't need straightening. Her fingers paused there for a second. You have been extremely good tonight, she said, and I don't mean with the seating charts. I know what you meant. She pulled her hand back slowly. We should talk. We should, I agreed. After, I said. The photo happened in front of the Muskoka package display. Board chair, event director, 3 key organizers, and me, standing beside Audrey because she'd made a decision about what she wanted visible. She put her hand briefly at my arm. Not hidden, not explained. From across the room, I saw Tyler watching. He finished his drink, checked his phone, and left before the dinner course. The dinner went smoothly by Audrey's standards, which meant 2 things went slightly wrong in ways that no guest noticed. The MC arrived during the salad course, slightly disheveled and apologetic, and Audrey handed him his notes with such calm efficiency that he thanked her like she pulled him from a river. The live auction went long, good long, the kind where bidders are competing. The hockey package went for $4,800 over ask. The Muskoka cottage weekend went to a bidding war between 2 tables that Audrey had quietly kept on opposite sides of the room all night. The private dinner hit its reserve with 3 minutes left and then went higher. When the final number came through, Priya turned to Audrey from across the table and held up a number on her tablet. Audrey read it, and the professional expression cracked just slightly. A genuine smile, small and real. The kind she only showed when something had actually gone right. I was close enough to see it. She looked over at me a second later. I nodded once. She pressed her lips together to keep the smile from becoming something bigger in the middle of the room. Priya, appeared beside me with a glass of sparkling water she handed me without asking. She doesn't smile like that for the numbers, she said. Just so you know. The event hit target, I said. Garrett, she looked at me. The event hit target 20 minutes ago. She smiled when she looked at you. She was gone before I could answer. By 11, the room was clearing. The quartet had packed up. Volunteers were quietly breaking down cocktail tables. The auctioneer had gone home. Priya was doing a final walk with the catering captain, and Audrey was standing near the window in the now mostly empty ballroom, heels in one hand, clipboard under one arm, looking at the room in the way you look at something you built. I walked over. Final number? I asked. 2.3, she said. Past target. Not bad for someone who doesn't love being the face. She laughed, quiet and tired. I opened the auction for 11 minutes and now I never want to do it again. You were good at it. I know. She said it without arrogance, just honestly. That's somehow worse. Now they'll ask me to do it next year. I stood beside her, looking at the empty room. The ballroom looked different now. The amber lights dimmed, chairs pushed in at odd angles, one centerpiece left crooked on a far table. The expensive feeling had given way to something more ordinary and, I thought, more honest. What Tyler said, she said after a moment, not looking at me, about me not letting people see when things are difficult. You don't have to. I know I don't. I want to. She shifted her heels to her other hand. He wasn't completely wrong. I do that. I got very good at looking like I had everything sorted, and eventually, it became the only way I knew how to show up, even with people I didn't have to perform for. You don't perform with me. I try not to, she paused. Sometimes I still do, out of habit. Audrey. Yeah? What happened in the bathroom? I said, before we left. She turned to look at me. That wasn't a performance, I said. She was quiet for a moment. The room settled around us, air vents humming, a distant sound of someone in the corridor with the cart. No, she said, it wasn't. So, she looked down at her heels, then back up. I have spent a long time being very careful not to want things from people that might change what I had with them, because what I had felt like enough, safe enough to keep. And now? And now, she said, I'm standing in an empty ballroom at 11:15 with my shoes off, and I'm tired of calling you my friend, like that's the whole sentence. There it was. 4 years of coffee runs and borrowed hoodies and late-night texts and careful words, all of it suddenly named properly. I stepped closer. Write in the comments, do you think Audrey should have said this sooner or was waiting the right call? She looked at me. Are you actually narrating right now? Force of habit. She shook her head, but she was smiling, a real one. The kind she gave when something caught her off guard in the best possible way. And then she wasn't smiling because we were closer and the room had gone the particular quiet that happens when two people stop pretending they don't already know what happens next. I kissed her in the empty ballroom, the crooked centerpiece still on that table across the room, the last of the candles still lit on the window ledge, her heels somewhere on the floor. She kissed me back like she'd been holding the idea at arm's length for a long time, and had finally decided that made no sense. When we pulled apart, she kept her forehead near mine. I'm going to be very awkward about this, she said. I know. I might overcorrect for several weeks and be professionally distant. I'll survive. And Priya is going to be absolutely insufferable. She already started, I said. Audrey pulled back just enough to look at me. She did? In the second hour, said you smiled at me, not the numbers. Audrey closed her eyes briefly. I work with extremely perceptive people. You hired them. Worst decision I ever made. But she was still smiling. She reached down and picked up her heels, then looked at the room one more time. The event she'd spent 4 months building, now mostly dark and done. Come on, she said. I'll buy you a drink downstairs. The bar closes at midnight and I need to sit in a chair that doesn't cost the foundation anything. We walked out through the ballroom side exit, down a corridor lined with the event's leftover supplies, stacked chairs, folded linens, programs no one took. She reached over without looking at me and found my hand. We didn't make it complicated. We didn't discuss the timeline or the friendship or the rules people construct to protect things that don't need protecting. We just walked down the corridor holding hands like that was the only arrangement that had ever made sense. The bar was quiet, mostly empty, a couple in the corner and a bartender wiping down glasses. We sat on stools at the far end. Audrey ordered a Negroni. I ordered whatever was local on tap, which turned out to be a Muskoka craft, which made her laugh for a different reason. The universe is a little on the nose tonight, she said. I think it's been on the nose for 4 years, I said. We're the ones who took a while. She looked at her glass, then at me. Yeah, she said quietly. We did. She stole a sip of my beer. I didn't say anything, because I'd bought the extra pint knowing she would. A month later, everyone at the foundation knew. Priya held out for 11 days before she said anything, which I was told was a personal record for restraint. She referred to the night at the gala as the ballroom incident, then shortened it to the incident, which Audrey told her was vague and unhelpful. Priya said it was accurate and moved on. Audrey still worked too much. She still showed up at my place with food from the Thai place when she'd had a long week and didn't want to explain it. She still corrected the way I loaded the dishwasher with a patience that was, honestly, more than I deserved. I still showed up early to her big events and found the things that needed doing before she had to ask. Nothing important had changed. We just finally stopped leaving the most honest part of it out of the sentence. I think about the bathroom mirror a lot. Not the kiss in the ballroom, not the Negroni at midnight, not even the moment Audrey took my hand in the corridor without looking at me to check if it was okay. I think about the mirror and the 2 seconds of quiet after I said something true and how close I came to filling that silence with a joke. That's the version of the night that scares me a little. The one where I said, just kidding, and she laughed, and we went to the gala and nothing shifted. I was this close to choosing that, not because I was dishonest, but because honesty felt like it cost something I wasn't sure I could afford to lose. What I've come to understand, looking back, is that what we call safety is sometimes just fear wearing a more comfortable name. I called Audrey my friend for 4 years because the word covered everything without asking too much of me. It let me show up, care deeply, be present, and still keep one hand on the door in case things got complicated. That wasn't integrity. That was self-protection dressed up as consideration. The things that actually changed the night of the gala weren't grand gestures. They were small, honest ones. Telling Tyler that he didn't get to narrate her. Staying close when she was managing more than anyone in that room could see. Not stepping back from the mirror when the easier move was obvious. Each of those moments required something. A willingness to be clear about what I actually thought, even when clarity had consequences. That's the part I keep returning to. Not the romance of it, but the discipline of it. The choice, repeated throughout the night, to be truthful rather than convenient. Audrey was doing the same thing in her own way. She'd spent years being the most capable person in every room and had somewhere along the way convinced herself that needing things, wanting to be known, wanting someone to stay, made her a burden. Tyler had handed her a version of herself that was too difficult to love fully, and part of her had believed it. What took courage wasn't the moment she took my hand. It was the months before that, where she kept showing up anyway, kept being honest in the small ways, kept not letting the hurt from their relationship turn her into someone smaller. That kind of persistence, the quiet refusal to become less, is its own form of strength. What I know now is that the people worth building something with are the ones who choose honesty when it's inconvenient, who show up in service corridors and taxicabs and ordinary Tuesday evenings, not just in the moments that look good. And the relationships worth having are the ones where you eventually stop performing safety and start actually telling the truth. Priya was right. Audrey smiled when she looked at me, not at the number on the tablet, and I think the reason it meant anything at all was because we both, over 4 years, quietly earned it.